So today, some breaking news, quite a few stories to talk about, and that's what I do. Chris is off tonight, Chris Kroc. He's on vacation. I'm Jeff, Westside Jeff, sitting in for Chris tonight. I'll be in the rest of this week. I'll be filling in for Chris next week as he fills in for Casey. Casey will be taking time off to, as he says, spend time with his wife. He calls her Carrie Underwood. So that'll be interesting, and I'll get a chance to sit back in. I'll be on probably the next couple weeks for Chris as we fill in some vacations and I cover the evenings. So thanks for joining tonight. My story's simple. Born and raised up in Ohio, and I'm just a regular guy, not a professional kind of talk show guy. Get a chance to sit in and just give you a common sense opinion on current events. That's how I bill it. When I talk to people and they say, what do you talk about on the radio? My answer is just common sense opinion on current events. I follow the news, watch it, pay attention to it, read it, process it, analyze it, and give you my opinion. Lead story today is continues to be the story with the assassination of the United Healthcare president, Brian Thompson, in New York. There's some breaking news on that. I want to cover that. Give me 4 minutes and I'll tell you that. But first, a couple other things worth mentioning. First and foremost, it sticks out to me. Bill Belichick calls his next play by heading to college at 72 years old. Belichick, the former Patriots head coach, has reportedly accepted a position as the head coach at University of North Carolina. And right now he's building a staff. What's interesting about that story, there's a lot of elements. First and foremost, he's 72 years old. Secondly, he's got a girlfriend that's in her 20s. So when you see the two of them together, quite honestly, I've seen many pictures of the two of them across social media. And if you didn't know better, you'd look at it and think there's a grandfather and his granddaughter. If they're not holding hands or something, it's kind of what it looks like, but it's not the case. 72-year-old man and 20-something-year-old woman, what the hell can they have in common? Other than she wants his money and he likes hanging with a very attractive young lady. The other interesting thing about North Carolina, Bill going back to college and taking this position, is if you sit back and ask yourself why, what's behind it? Well, let's remember this. North Carolina University is very, very, very well funded by one Michael Jordan, one of the richest guys in the country. Jordan went to UNC. He will write a check for UNC for anything. And I'm sure he's got a lot of money there for NIL and other things. And they probably want to rebuild that program a little bit and make it a power top 10 type program. And quite honestly, they probably can. The beautiful thing about Belichick as a coach, I don't see Bill Belichick jumping on a plane and flying across country and coming down to North Texas and doing a home visit with an athlete. Quite honestly, Belichick's the kind of guy that I think any parent or any athlete, high school athlete looking to go to college and play football, something tells me that athlete and that parent would be happy to take a Zoom call from Bill Belichick. So it's a different animal. With a guy with as many rings as he's got, I would think that he probably could dictate some outcomes there. Does it work? Yeah. Listen, in the conference that they're in, yeah, that works. But it's going to be interesting to watch that story. I root for interesting. I like interesting stories. I like stories that you don't know an outcome. And this is one of those. Bill Belichick headed back to college at 72 years old as the head coach in North Carolina, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill football program. A second story that I want to talk about, mention before I get to the United Healthcare story in 2 minutes, is last night we spent quite a bit of time talking about a significant merger of Albertsons and Kroger. Kroger was merging, so it's merger and acquisitions. If you're in the business world, you get M&A. The concept of M&As, it's companies merging and trying to combine resources and grow their business. That's been on the table for Kroger and Albertsons for several months. Finally, Tuesday, so yesterday, a judge sided with the Federal Trade Commission and argued that the supermarket deal would have eliminated competition and left shoppers vulnerable to high prices. So the judge blocked Kroger from acquiring Albertsons. And the judge's argument was it makes them too big. It eliminates competition. And my immediate thought when I read that, saw that, and studied that, my immediate thought is, really? Because Kroger's market share of the grocery business is about 10%. Albertsons is about 6%. You combine the two, you got 16. Walmart almost has a quarter of the share, about 24 points, 24 share points. So a judge is making a decision that the combination of Kroger and Albertsons makes them too big, and it hurts consumers because of price increases, yet Walmart is okay. They're playing favorites there. And it's the Biden administration's FTC department. I wonder what would happen if Trump were in office. I wonder what would happen if it were Trump's FTC. I'm a firm believer that capitalism is good. And to me, it's capitalism. And I have no problem with Kroger and Albertsons merging. But today, America's two biggest supermarket operators have gone from being deal partners to legal rivals in less than 24 hours. As grocery store operator Albertsons said it terminated its plan to sell it to Kroger and filed a lawsuit alleging Kroger didn't even do enough to secure regulatory approval for the company's $20 billion deal. It's a day after the federal court blocked it. So I find that interesting that the judge said they'd be too big. It would eliminate competition. So the judge would not let that happen. And the deal blows up with Kroger and Albertsons suing each other over the outcome of that. Pretty interesting story. I'm a business guy. I like watching business news. And that certainly impacts you at the grocery store. Took many calls last night about this. One guy, I think his name was Ryan, that said he absolutely agrees with the judge not allowing them to break up because his perspective was Kroger and Albertsons merger wouldn't have significant impact in Dallas proper, but it would have significant impact in some of the rural areas across this country where there's not enough grocery store competition. I don't agree with him, but that was his perspective. Most of our callers said, no, let it happen. I'm in favor of that. The third story that real quickly is FBI Director Christopher Wray revealing today that to the FBI employees that he'll resign at the end of the Joe Biden administration, making way for Donald Trump's new FBI director, his nominee, Kash Patel. Patel is a former federal prosecutor and fierce Trump defender. Wray was selected by Trump in 2017, so he was Trump's nomination choice to run the FBI back then. It was a 10-year term. He has 3 years before his term is up. But today he decided, and he specifically said he's going to step down as the FBI director and make way for Kash Patel. He said it was best for the agency. Trump praised that announcement. Pretty interesting, those stories, what's going on. The other big story today is the story on what's going on the latest with United Healthcare. And there's a lot of news about this in New York with evidence building against the suspect in the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And there are a lot of elements and angles to this story I want to get into. I got to hit a quick break. It's about 3.5 minutes. And on the other side of that, so I get to Mickey Briggs at the bottom of the hour, but got to hit a quick break now. On the other side of this, I want to tell you more about the United Healthcare story and a lot of angles of that. It's like a big onion. It's big, it's stinky. The more you unwrap it, the more you unpeel it, the more layers you come up on, it gets worse. And today was one of those days. I'll tell you more in about 3.5 minutes. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Lots of news today in the New York area on evidence building against the suspect in the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Give me 4 minutes. We'll get to that. I want to recap real quickly that another big news story today is Bill Belichick. Belichick is being announced as the new head coach for University of North Carolina, head football coach. He will have access to a blank check with Michael Jordan being a UNC graduate. Bill has credibility, and the name and impact alone will have significant impacts for college football by putting the spotlight and megaphone on UNC. Now, if you remember, what was it, a year ago that Deion Sanders went out to Colorado, and hell, you never turn on your TV and see Colorado on television. You got to realize the media still drives sports. Without the media, sports doesn't exist. These big contracts in media are all about sports, and as television gets DVR'd, advertisers want to advertise in live television programming, which is why news and sports are your top two vehicles for businesses to advertise in television. They want to be in areas that people don't DVR. It's sports, and live news. It adds immediate value to UNC, to the program, to recruitment, to NIL. It's an all-around good thing for UNC to bring in Bill Belichick. It's, a wise old talk show host that I grew up listening to up in Ohio named Bob Connors used to say, Jeff, if you want to know why something happens, real simple, follow the money. Great line from Bob. I agree with it. Follow the money. That's what this is about. You got an opinion? I'd like to hear it. You can hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff on X, formerly known as Twitter, on Facebook and on Instagram. Or you can pick up a phone like Mike and Keller did and call me at 800-288-9227. That's 800-288-WBAP. Mike, what's your opinion? What's your 2 cents worth on the Bill Belichick story and why making that move?
Instead of giving you 2 cents, I'm going to give you a quarter. For one, like I was telling your call screener, that Bill Belichick got his start that way, too, because his father used to coach at the Naval Academy in Maryland. And through networking, his first coaching job, he landed on the staff of the Baltimore Colts back in the mid-'70s. Okay? Now, also bring it forward that his son is going to be on that coaching staff as well, and he made it in cahoots that once he steps down and retire, his son gets that position. So I believe that's a good thing. Two, he can also bring in a well-established football player. Matter of fact, arguably one of the most greatest defensive players that ever played that he coached. And that was Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor is a product of the North Carolina Tar Heels.
Just like Michael Jordan, right, Mike?
Right. So, everybody knows that he coached LT as a defensive coordinator for the Giants. But LT is also an alum of North Carolina.
Follow the money, my friend. Follow the money, and Belichick will drive some money to UNC and put the spotlight back into UNC football. Mike, thanks for calling. I appreciate you being a part of the show tonight. Thanks. Have a great night, and thanks for listening. I mentioned a moment ago that the other story I want to get into is the story out of New York City, and that is the evidence that is building against the suspect in the assassination attempt of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Now, the weapon that Luigi Mangione had with him when he was arrested, because police found one, matches the evidence from the Manhattan crime scene as the shell casings from the shots in Manhattan match the gun. So there's a match. I saw earlier today, I was watching a press conference with the law enforcement agency kind of giving an update on this, and they said that the fingerprints, they recovered the water bottle. If you remember the video of the suspect walking up the street, he was eating I think it was a Kind bar, like an energy bar, and drink a bottle of water, and he threw those two items away. They recovered those items, and the fingerprints on there match his fingerprints. So we have the gun, we have his fingerprints. They've got their guy. And we saw yesterday how he grandstanded and made a made-for-TV moment by screaming at the cameras as the police dragged him out of the car and took him in the courtroom. I got a lot of opinions on this kid. And I'm one of those guys, the name is Jeff, it's West Side Jeff, sitting in for Chris Crock. if you've listened to me before, you know my shtick, my story, and that is I'm a processor. I like watching stories, and I watch them across multiple networks. I don't only watch Fox or News Nation or CNN, MSNBC. I watch them all because I want to hear and see different perspectives. And I read multiple stories in multiple printed publications. USA Today, the LA newspaper, the New York newspaper, the Washington Post, Dallas News. I go around a lot of places and I try to consume as much information. Just like you, I don't know how much to trust the damn media. I don't have belief in what I'm hearing and seeing, so I need self-verification, and you should too. Multiple sources. I'm not a news guy, I'm an opinion guy. And what I do is I go to the aggregator of all these stories, I aggregate them, consume them, figure out my opinion, analyze it, and share it with you. I've got multiple opinions I want to get into with this kid because there's some institutional control things that need to change. And I'll explain that. I got to hit bottom of the hour news in about 3 minutes. I'll explain it after the news. And Trey from Duncanville, I see you there on hold, and you want to talk about Belichick. We'll get to that first after the news. So sit tight, and I want to get to you after the news. But coming up next, Mickey Briggs in about 2 minutes in the newsroom with an update on what's going on in New York as well as other stories here in and around North Texas. On the other side of that, I'll give you my 2 cents worth, my opinion, my analysis of what I see out of the case of the UHC CEO murdered, assassinated, and some takeaways from that. Pretty strong opinions. I'll share those in about 6 minutes after the bottom of the hour news. My name is Jeff. It's West Side Jeff on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Bill Belichick is the next head coach. He's an 8-time Super Bowl champion, has officially been named head coach at UNC football, the Tar Heels. Belichick goes to the Tar Heel State to coach football. We took a caller a moment ago that said it's he says it's all about Bill setting up his kid, that part of the contract is when Bill decides to step down, his kid takes over. I've read that and seen that too, and yeah, I think that's part of it. But I think it's also, to me, it's about follow the money. Sure, he's setting up his kid, but it's also, there's a lot of money there. Listen, you pay a guy enough money, he'll do just about anything. All you got to do is look at Live Golf, for God's sakes. How that story impacts us here in Dallas is there's been rumors for quite some time that if Jerry does not retain Mike McCarthy, that Bill Belichick was on the short list. And that eliminates that, at least for now. I think Belichick will be a success in UNC. He'll drive a lot of money there. Michael Jordan is a pretty big star there. And I think it's going to have a significant impact. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. My number is 800-288-9227. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. When you call, you'll talk to one of two producers, Garrett Tarango or Shamar. I'm so dangerous, I guess. Got to have two guys in there to make sure I don't do anything wrong, but that's okay. Hopefully I don't. 800-288-9227 is the number. You can also hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff. But just pick up the phone and call me like Trey from Duncanville has at 1-800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. Trey, thanks for listening. Thanks for calling. You're on with Westside Jeff. What's your thought on the Belichick story?
Well, it's nice to talk to you again. Always a pleasure. I would say I'm not really, for three reasons, I'm not really moved one way or another that much by this particular news about Bill Belichick. And I'm saying this as a big college football fan. There are three reasons. First of all, North Carolina is a basketball school, not a football school. You say Michael Jordan, everybody knows who he is. Secondly, with all the NIL stuff, and you see these, premier programs, and you see a lot of kids, they be there for one or two seasons. Whether they play or not, they move to one school to another. That happened with Quinn Ewers. He was with Ohio State for a year, got $1 or $2 million, and then he goes down to Austin the next year. He's a starting quarterback, And then thirdly, I just don't think, well, North Carolina is part of the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference, and they're not the big kahuna like the SEC, the Southeast Conference, or the Big Ten. I mean, if you look at viewership, the two biggest games that were watched were Texas A&M, which was the SEC, which was broadcast on ESPN, and then the game, supposedly, Ohio State University versus the Michigan Wolverines, which was on Fox. And, I mean, if you look at the viewership, they dwarfed whatever happened with all the other games. I mean, there was a North Carolina State game. There was a Notre Dame USC game. There was the Florida State game. All the other games were, they paled in comparison to, like I say, the first two games. And I just think the viewers have spoken, and pretty much, whether we like it or not, SEC and the Big Ten will dominate college football for a long time. And I'm a Texas Tech graduate. Even though I'm a big Notre Dame fan, I still like both schools, but I know they just pale in comparison to those two conferences.
Trey, thank you for calling. I appreciate your opinion on that. Some great, valid points there. I hear you, understand you. It's interesting you're talking about those things. My 2 cents worth on a couple things are, first of all, the Big Ten and SEC are pretty big. I don't ever see UNC ever supplanting those, and that's not my point. But my attitude and my point is that my opinion is, you know what, 3 years ago, Colorado was irrelevant. Colorado was never really on TV. If it was like on Fox Sports something at like 10 o'clock at night. It just was irrelevant. But it became very relevant when Deion Sanders took the job, and even more so relevant when he brought in all kinds of transfers from the portal, had money to pay them, and started winning some games. The mojo for Colorado grew significantly. But we realize as we watch Colorado football that we don't see it. It's not the quality of football you see from Alabama, from Georgia, from LSU, from Texas, from Ohio State. It's Oregon. It's not the same caliber. We get that. I don't think UNC football has to get to that level to be successful. I think UNC football gets to a level that makes them relevant again. Mac Brown, quite honestly, started making them relevant again. But I think this Belichick hiring makes him even more relevant, adds a financial source to it. Michael Jordan shows up at it. There's a lot of elements about it that make sense. To me, it's a story worth watching. It's a story I'm going to be keeping an eye on. And quite honestly, with that announcement, my immediate thought is, you know what? I'll start turning on some UNC football games to see what's going on. I would have never done it before, but I will now. And again, it doesn't have to be massive TV ratings. But heck, if they can get a 15, 20% bump in ratings, or even a 40 or 50% bump like Colorado has, it's a win. And that's what I see happening there. Thank you for listening, and thank you for calling. I want to get back into by the way, if you have an opinion, you can call me 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. College football is huge. It's significant. You know my background. I was born and raised up in Columbus, Ohio, and people in Columbus, Ohio watch two teams, Ohio State and Michigan. And if you're a Ohio State fan, you want Ohio State to win every game and Michigan to lose every game. I'm not one of those. I want Michigan to win every game but one. And I didn't go to OSU, but you can't grow up in Columbus without being a fan of Ohio State, period. You just can't. So I do watch that and keep an eye on that. And to your point, Quinn Ewers, he went to Columbus. He played for a year or tried to compete for a year, didn't really play a lot. Got paid $1 million and decided to transfer to Texas. The whole NIL thing is out of control. There's no guardrails, and they need to fix it. And I think over time they will. They have to, because it'll ruin college football otherwise. The other big story I want to talk about is the story about the UHC killer, Luigi Mangione. And there's a lot of elements of the story I want to get into. First, I want to get to Ken from Arlington to talk about that, his thought and opinion on this story. Ken, thanks for listening. You're on the Chris Crock Show with Westside Jeff.
Hey, I think they'll find them guilty, but how many people on that jury are going to not necessarily sympathize with them, but agree with what he did, that maybe one of their family members got screwed by the insurance company?
You know, Ken, it's interesting you say that because in my office yesterday, one of the guys in the office said, how long until we see protesters in courthouses and streets across the country supporting this kid and sympathizing with this kid? And quite honestly, I think the attorneys in this case, one of the things that they can do to help their cause is to make this not a trial about him, but make it a trial about insurance companies, I think can help their cause. To your point, good points on that, Ken. Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That's Ken from Arlington. I will get into more on this and thoughts. I think this kid was well educated and attended schools. He had opportunities that you and I never did. I couldn't get into UPenn, and I certainly couldn't afford it. Some point in time, something snapped. I want to talk about, did he become radicalized? Did he become indoctrinated? We'll talk about that. Got to hit a quick news break. We'll talk about that in about 3.5 minutes and take more calls from you at 800-288-9227. It's 800-288-WBAP. You can also hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff. Once again, Westside Jeff is my name, sitting in for Chris Crock tonight here on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Jeff is the name. Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock. Several stories we're navigating tonight. One is FBI Director Christopher Wray revealing to FBI employees that he will resign at the end of the Biden administration, making way for Donald Trump's new FBI director, his appointee, Kash Patel. Now, Patel is a former federal prosecutor and fierce Trump defender, and that's why he's getting that nomination. Wray was originally Trump's selection in 2017. It was a 10-year term. He'll be leaving 3 years before his term is up. Today, Donald Trump praised that announcement. It's been clear that Trump has said, in essence, without saying it, he's sending the dog whistles. He's going to fire him if he doesn't quit. And Wray said he's going to step down on that. Another big story going on is the Kroger was going to acquire Albertsons. That impacts our wallet here in Dallas. A judge sided with the FTC and said, no, don't want that to happen because if it does, it's going to increase prices. So according to them, they're saving us money. I don't agree with that. I think that's a bad call. I don't think that it impacts things at all. Bad call. I'm a capitalist. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. Stories still going on with the murder of the UHC CEO. We'll get into in a few minutes, but first I want to get back to another story, and that is Bill Belichick has been named as the head coach for UNC Tar Heels, the North Carolina Tar Heels in the state of North Carolina. Michael Jordan's alma mater. Bill Belichick takes over. You heard my opinion. My opinion is it's exciting. It's great for college football. Follow the money, folks. That's what it's all about. 800-288-9227 is the phone number if you'd like to weigh in on any of these stories, or hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff. But love phone calls. So dial 800-288-9227 like Jim in Dallas. Jim, thanks for listening. You're on the Chris Crock Show with Jeff, Westside Jeff. What's your thought on the Bill Belichick story?
Hey, what's that? How you doing?
I'm great, man. Thank you for calling and thanks for listening. What's your take on this thing?
My take is this. This is what I'd call a strategically genius move on the part of Belichick. He's got something, and it's got potential. Yeah, but if nothing happens, nothing really big happens, he probably can still do at least a little bit to improve that team. But what he's got is this, a big fat bargaining chip in case Jerry Jones says, hey, I'd really like to have you as a quarterback or as a team coach over here. Okay, he says, yeah, well, I already got a job. You know what I got to do? See how big you got, how much money you got in your bank account, because it's going to cost you. So it works out good for both ways. I've got to comment quickly about Kroger, like Ed, if you want to have you say about our thoughts about whether or not you think my idea has any merit for Belichick's strategy.
Well, my 2 cents worth on that is that I think everything lines up. It should go well for Belichick. My one concern is this, Jim. Can he relate? Will he relate to 19-year-old kids? These are not professionals doing it for a job. These are 19 and 20-year-old kids. He's a grandfather. I mean, these kids are going in, and he's 72, and they're going to look at him and go, "You're like my grandpa." The advantage, he's got a 20-something-year-old hot girlfriend, so maybe he's plugged in with the generation. But I think there's generational divide. I think today's youth is difficult to capture, to work with. We're seeing it across all of sports. We're seeing it across college sports and professional sports. Hell, we're seeing it in day-to-day society, just in government and municipalities. So my one concern is, does he relate with kids today? The quality of athletes today isn't what it was 20 years ago. Does that make sense, Jim?
Yeah, but he's got a golden parachute, if that's not working out, and Jerry Jones comes courting, he can always go with him. And to me, as far as that Kroger goes, let me make a quick comment on this. I would love to go over the financial records of that judge who made that decision and see if he's got either a dime from a Walmart or Amazon, because I'll bet you, somehow or other they made some campaign contributions to him to get them there. Because that thing can only lower prices, because the more buying power that Kroger would have, the lower their prices are going to be, and the more competitive they'll be with both Amazon and Walmart.
I completely agree with you, Jim. There's more to that story that we may never know, and there's ulterior motives behind the FTC and that judge, and maybe all the way up to the Biden administration. There's ulterior motives is why that deal got killed. That's not as simple as black and white. I don't know the rest of the story. I'm not that smart of a guy, but I'm smart enough to have common sense, and my common sense tells me there's more to that story than that. Thank you, Jim, for calling, and I appreciate you listening to the show. Back to you. Back to the killer of the UHC CEO. It came out today that the weapon, when Mangione was apprehended, he had a gun with him, and the gun he had with him matches the ballistics of the shell casings from the scene of the crime. They also matched up his fingerprints to the bottled water he threw away and the wrapper he threw away. I want to got at the top of the hour news, and on the other side of that, I want to talk about the gun that he used, because I find it fascinating. The gun he used, in part, was a 3D printed gun. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I don't get it. I don't have a 3D printer. I don't have that kind of money. I want to ask you, I want to pick your brains on 3D printers. Never seen one, never experienced one, never seen things that was built by it. It fascinates me, and I'd like to see it, touch it, feel it, smell it, and I'd love to hear your perspective, especially if you have experience with 3D guns at all, or 3D printers at all. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock. Top of the hour news in about 2 minutes. On the other side of that, we'll continue the conversation.